Hello there. So this is going to be a bit of a different video than normal. It's not really going to be martial art focused like what I usually do. Because this one's more of like a personal story in a sense. But hopefully it's still useful to some people. So basically, I'm gonna go on about my sort of experience with what's known as like social anxiety disorder. I hate actually like phrasing it like that. Any sort of like any of these things I hate, but or S.A.D. So like my experience with it and kind of how I've dealt with it, and maybe that's useful to some people. So I thought I'd make a longer video on it. And so to clarify, I've never actually been officially diagnosed because I've never gone in to like do that sort of thing. I've never bothered doing that. I've always kind of dealt with it myself and kept it as like a personal battle. I don't know if that's the best way of doing it or not, but it's just how I've done it. So like I said, I've never been officially diagnosed. It's one of those things that it's not because for me, I'll explain. For me, it started when I was about 7. I was in year 3 at school, primary school, and what was it? I think I got asked a question. My earliest memory of it, anyway, and I can't even remember what it was, but I just didn't want to answer. I just sort of like slid, and, like hid under the desk, basically, and just didn't want to respond. And kind of since then, had similar reaction, like when you're asked to do something in school, I kind of just freeze up. The way I'd try and explain it, it's not like it's almost not like you're too afraid to say anything. It's like you got your central nervous system, you got your fight or flight response, or like fight, fly, or freeze, like the 3 ways that your like central nervous system can respond to like intense danger. You can either bolt it, run away, be mega scared, either kind of get aggressive and fight, or you can like freeze up and lock up, almost like pretending you're not there or playing dead. And it's kind of like, the way I would explain it is like these kind of social pressure situations would just trigger this freeze response inside me. So I'd kind of like say later on, I might, in English you're asked to like read out. I'd be asked to read out, and I'd kind of just freeze up and just stare at the book, not move, and wait until the teacher got bored and moved on. Like even the stubborn teachers, they'd be like try and push me, and I'd just freeze up, not move, not give any kind of reaction, because I knew eventually they'd like give up and move on and leave me alone. And it's really weird. It's because you feel like you can't control it. It's like almost like an invisible barrier just comes up, and it prevents you from like kind of any form of expression or movement. So it's I wouldn't describe it as a lack of self-confidence, because I've always felt like I'm fairly confident in my ability to do things. So it's not the same as like general anxiety or anything like that. It's kind of more like this weird physical thing inside you that just blocks you from being able to do anything, or that triggers that sort of freeze response. So especially throughout school, ever since then, since that, like when I was 7, kind of made it really hard for me to do any kind of interaction in class. Didn't actually stop me from like being able to learn things or anything, but also doesn't help that I'm also naturally mega introverted. Like I did this personality test, and on the sliding scale of like introverted versus extroverted, I was like like 97% introverted or something, which I even found quite surprising that it was like that far. But being like mega introverted doesn't mean that you like don't like interacting with people or having conversation, it kind of just means that you don't get any kind of mental stimulus from it, and I never get any kind of craving to go out and talk to people, essentially. And so that doesn't help either. So, going, it was always really bad at the first, when I first got it, sort of encountered it. It was like really bad. But I noticed that over time, I got very slightly better over the years, and that kind of helped me feel like I might eventually be able to get over it. So that was kind of a good thing. So I don't know what other people's experience with this type of thing is. I know a lot of people tend to get this kind of issue or similar ones more when they're in the teenage years. Me, it was much earlier, and I think some people get it in like sort of teenage puberty years, and then it kind of gets really bad. It kind of gets worse. Whereas me, it was like really bad at the start, and it kind of gradually has gotten better. And as I've kind of gotten older and kind of found ways of like dealing with it, in terms of the actual like freeze thing, that barely happens to me at all anymore. I don't really get that now, but I used to get it like all the time. Like I said, at school mostly. Whenever you're like asked a question, maybe you're put on the spot, or situations where you've got to like be proactive. You got to like be. I'm still quite bad at the proactive side, I suppose, but I am a lot better when you have to like be the first one to like initiate a conversation. Or like at school, it was really bad if I ever had to like knock on a door to go in or something. Like there were times where it would be in a situation where I'd have to like knock on a door, like go through the door rather than it being opened for me, where I would just like not be able to do it, and I'd just like go like run away or something stupid like that. And it's annoying how much it like debilitates you and your ability to kind of be yourself and to express or like explore your potential, because of how it limits your ability to interact with people. So let me just see. I would say, in terms of advice for how I've kind of gotten better at dealing with it, the first thing is like kind of like I said, I noticed that I was like, if I would, like 3 years later from when I first had it, I'd look back and be like, okay, I'm not quite as bad. It's only slightly better, but I'm not quite as bad. So it's like a trend over time. I had faith that I would eventually overcome it. That's like a big-ish thing, actually. I think having that sort of internal belief that eventually you will actually be able to sort of get over it, because I noticed that trend, and I sort of project it forwards. Eventually, I'll get better and better until it gets to the point where I'm actually basically free from it, or potentially even better, essentially. So in terms of advice, in terms of practical things that I've done to try and attack it more, I've kind of done more of that in like recent years. And so one I would say is and I know especially if you're really introverted like me, it's really hard to do, but is to deliberately put yourself in situations where you're going to meet new people. And new people are really useful because they don't know you. Now, people already know you, it's harder because they already have this like impression of you, and you know that when you've got like this sort of problem, it makes you, like mega self-aware. You're like you're never in your own head. You're always like in other people's heads, trying to imagine how they're perceiving you. It's really annoying, and not really the best way to do things, but it's how it is. It's what it's like. So with new people, it's like a chance to like set their expectation like fresh, and it gives you opportunities to like get better at skills, like actually meeting new people and like speaking to them for the first time. Like with me, for ages it took me like so long to get used to being around new people. Like when I went to college for like 2 years, the first year I didn't even like really interact with many people at all. It was only like a year later, in the second year, where I was actually comfortable like interacting more with people, as daft as that sounds. But I'm much faster now, because I've been through that phase of like meeting new people more and like getting to know them, how that sort of works, and like practicing asking questions about people, because obviously, because I'm so introverted, I actually don't care about interacting and like small talk and stuff. So I have to like force myself to do it to get better at like how it works. And it doesn't mean that I'm not like interested in what people do, or like don't care about them. It's just that I don't have any innate desire to do it. I have to force myself to do it. That's what it means essentially. And then another big thing would be to kind of study kind of like interaction and things like charisma stuff. So like, you can read classic books like How to Make Friends and Influence People. That's a good one. There's loads of YouTube channels about stuff like this now, like Charisma on Command, I think it's called. And there's loads of those kind of channels. You can sort of research stuff if you know, especially if you're more introverted and you like to sort of hide in your own space and just focus hard on certain things. You can like hard study how this stuff works, and you can try and play with different things. I'll tell you one sort of thing I've been doing lately that's really helped me a lot in terms of the general feeling of confidence, is actually playing this like stupid game where it's like eye contact. It's like you're always trying to be the one who doesn't look away. Like I notice, like I remember, if you ever like look away first, or like awkwardly look away, it like makes you feel like you're like weak and useless in a sense. You're obviously not, but it kind of, so if you play this game where you always make sure that they are the one to break eye contact first, it helps you sort of feel, it's a weird thing, but that's like the sort of thing I've been doing at the moment to help with that. Yeah, that's kind of, it's not like the full sort of story, but that'll take forever to go through, like, because I got it when I was 7. I'm like 27 now, so that's like 20 years of my life, and there's no point of like going through the whole thing. But essentially, that's kind of a rough overview of like this kind of major problem has been like one of the biggest issues for me growing up, and even up to today, and kind of ways that I've sort of tried to deal with it and my approach towards it. I've never had any like medication or anything. I personally don't like the idea of trying to medicate sort of mental health problems, because I think that just those sort of, I don't like the sort of treatment where it just stops symptoms and doesn't treat the actual cause. I think you have to attack the cause and not even bother about symptoms unless they're like really bad. And obviously these sort of symptoms are bad, the things that you go through, but they're not actually what matters. I think you have to attack the cause with these sorts of things. But I'm no expert, but I have got my own experience, and thought I'd share it. So if you found any of this useful, or if it relates to you in any way, then let me know. Apart from that, I will see you in the next video.